When Swedish JS-39 Gripen fighters scrambled over the Baltic Sea to intercept a formation of Russian Tu-22M3 strategic bombers armed with Kh-32 hypersonic cruise missiles, most people around the world saw it as another tense moment between NATO and Moscow. But for those who pay attention to air power, Arctic security, and the realities of defending a vast northern territory, the event held deeper meaning, especially for Canada. It was not just a routine intercept. It was a real-world demonstration of how a smaller nation, using a cost-efficient and agile fighter like the Gripen, can react quickly and effectively against one of the most dangerous bomber-missile combinations Russia operates. To appreciate the significance, you must look at the details. The Russian Tu-22M3 bombers took off from Alenia Air Base on the Kola Peninsula, the same region that would be a key launch point in any future threat toward the Arctic or North Atlantic. Escorting them were Su-35 air superiority fighters, Russia's frontline tactical aircraft. On board the bombers were Kh-32 missiles, a modernized evolution of the Cold War Kh-22, a weapon that can climb above 40 kilometers, dive at extreme angles, accelerate to hypersonic speeds around Mach 5, and strike targets from nearly 1,000 kilometers away. Ukraine has already learned the hard way that the older Kh-22 can bypass Patriot and S-300 batteries. The Kh-32 takes that threat to an even higher level. Yet Sweden, a country with 10 million people, reacted in minutes. Gripen fighters launched, climbed, intercepted, and escorted the Russian formation without a single unsafe maneuver, fully within international aviation protocols. NATO aircraft tracked different phases of the flight, but it was Sweden's rapid reaction Gripen fleet that represented the front line in this encounter. And still, the Swedish Air Force calmly reported that the Russians stayed outside NATO and Swedish airspace, that no risky behavior occurred, and that the situation was managed professionally from start to finish. To many in North America, it looked simple. To military planners, it looked impressive. Because what Sweden did with a lightweight, affordable, highway-capable fighter is exactly the kind of capability Canada needs across its enormous 243,000-kilometer coastline, its Arctic air corridors, and its remote northern bases. This event matters for Canada because it illustrates a fundamental truth. A fighter jet doesn't need to be the heaviest, the most expensive, or the largest sensor platform to be effective. It needs to be available. It needs to launch quickly. It needs to operate in harsh weather. It needs to sustain high readiness at a reasonable cost. And it needs to give its pilots maximum autonomy and sovereign control. That is the real lesson from the Baltic. While the world focused on Russia's hypersonic Kh-32, defense analysts quietly focused on something else. Gripen showed up. Fast, dependably, without drama, without complex support, without massive crews. And that is exactly where Canada currently struggles. Canada's air defense challenge is not theoretical, it is geographic. The Royal Canadian Air Force monitors the world's second-largest national landmass. Extreme winter conditions, some of the coldest runways on Earth, and air patrol routes stretching thousands of kilometers from British Columbia to Newfoundland and deep into Arctic territories like Nunavut and the Northwest Territories. Even with NORAD, Canada shoulders a unique responsibility, maintaining rapid, reliable, all-weather Arctic readiness. That is precisely what Gripen was designed for. The Swedish Air Force openly acknowledges that Gripen is not the heaviest or most sensor-rich fighter in NATO. It is a lightweight, single-engine platform. Its radar is smaller. Its engine thrust is lower than aircraft like the F-16, J-10, F-15EX, or Russia's MiG-31. Yet ironically, These limitations are part of what makes Gripen ideal for nations that must patrol large, cold, remote regions. The aircraft is compact, rugged, easy to maintain, requires minimal ground crew, and can take off from short runways, even straight stretches of road. When the Russian Tu-22M3 launched from Kola, Sweden did not scramble an enormous fleet. It did not rely on massive infrastructure. It simply used a fighter built to operate with small teams, in cold weather, on short notice, from dispersed locations. It is this style of air power, smart, flexible, Arctic-ready, that resonates strongly with Canada's strategic reality. The Intercept also proved something that Canadians often overlook when evaluating fighter jets. Technology alone does not define national security. Readiness does. And readiness requires an aircraft that can survive extreme cold, use remote bases, generate high sortie rates, and deliver rapid reaction across long distances without relying on a giant logistics chain. Gripen was literally engineered for this doctrine. In a sense, the Baltic incident was like watching a live demonstration of what a Canadian-optimized fighter might look like. A fighter that doesn't need a massive airbase. One that can launch even if infrastructure is damaged, weather is harsh, or crews are limited. One that doesn't require billion-dollar hangars in the Arctic. One that can be serviced by a small team in parkas within minutes, not hours. This is not a hypothetical. This is how Sweden actually uses Gripen today. And that is why the intercept of the Tu-22M3 matters so much for Canadian defense thinkers. It shows that air power can be effective, fast, resilient, and affordable all at the same time. It shows that smaller nations with similar cold weather geography can defend large airspace without needing the world's most complex aircraft. It shows that sovereignty matters, and Sweden proved that sovereignty is not achieved by having the biggest fighter, but by having the right fighter. For Canada, watching Gripen's calm, confident performance against one of Russia's most dangerous strategic bomber platforms is more than a news event. It is a question. If Gripen can deliver this level of readiness for Sweden, a country with similar Arctic conditions, what could it deliver for Canada? To understand why the Baltic intercept resonates so strongly with Canada, you must look beyond the dramatic image of a Swedish Gripen facing off against a Russian Tu-22M3. The deeper lesson is about doctrine. It is about how nations design air power for their own geography, and why some aircraft succeed in environments where others struggle. This is where the Canadian and Swedish realities intersect almost perfectly. Sweden developed Gripen around one central idea: a fighter should be built for the country that flies it. In Sweden's case, that meant a fighter capable of surviving harsh winters, operating far from major bases, dispersing across remote highways, and launching quickly with minimal personnel. Canada faces nearly identical conditions, except on a scale several times larger. When you take the Gripen concept and scale it across Canada's Arctic geography, the alignment is striking. Cold weather operations, where Gripen's advantages become a Canadian advantage. Canada's air defense is defined by its environment. Freezing runways in Iqaluit, blowing snow in Inuvik, bitter temperatures in Yellowknife, and extreme remoteness across Nunavut and the Northwest Territories. Winter in parts of Canada reaches 40 degrees Celsius, similar to Swedish Lapland. Aircraft stationed in the north must operate reliably in these conditions, without extensive ground support or sheltered hangars, because such facilities do not always exist and are extremely expensive to maintain. Gripen's design philosophy began with exactly this reality. It was built to perform quick-turn operations in cold weather using small ground crews, sometimes as few as 6 technicians. It can be refueled, rearmed, and relaunched in about 10 minutes. This is not theoretical marketing language. This is how the Swedish Air Force actually operates the jet. The aircraft's systems are winter-hardened, optimized for rapid heating on startup, and designed for minimal cold soak issues. Even engine inlets and landing gear structures were engineered for snow, ice, and debris. For Canada, which must maintain air sovereignty over a northern area larger than the entire European Union, these characteristics are not conveniences, they are essential. A fighter that can operate with limited ground infrastructure allows Canada to maintain presence without building expensive permanent facilities across the Arctic. The ability to fly from short runways or even long stretches of road gives Canada flexibility during crises or natural disasters when northern bases are inaccessible. Arctic dispersed basing. Sweden's BAS-90 playbook scales naturally to Canada. One of the most underappreciated strengths of Gripen is how it fits into Sweden's dispersed basing doctrine, known as BAS-90. Under this system, aircraft are scattered across many small, hidden, or improvised locations. This ensures survivability, readiness, and unpredictability. Gripen's ability to operate from 800-meter stretches of road is central to this doctrine. Canada does not currently operate a dispersed basing system like BAS-90, but it could, and Gripen makes it feasible. Imagine the strategic value of fighters capable of deploying temporarily to remote regions, Arctic highways, or small forward bases during times of heightened tension. Not to wage war, but to show presence, deter incursions, and provide rapid sovereignty response. Canada's geography is its greatest defense asset, but only if its aircraft can disperse throughout it. This is the exact lesson Sweden demonstrated during the Tu-22M3 intercept. Gripen survives by not being tied to large, vulnerable bases. For Canada, this could transform NORAD operations, providing new layers of redundancy and resilience. Affordability and readiness. Two concepts Canada cannot ignore. Canada's biggest air power challenges are not just Arctic weather and geography, they are budget, readiness, and sustainment. Operating fighter jets across Canada's vast territory is staggeringly expensive. The aircraft chosen must not only fly well, it must fly often, without draining the defense budget. This is where Gripen stands out most sharply. Gripen is known globally for low operating costs, high availability, and simple maintenance requirements. The Swedish Air Force often achieves mission-ready rates above 80%, impressive for a frontline fighter. In contrast, heavy fifth-generation fighters typically require larger support teams, highly specialized equipment, costly spare parts, and long maintenance cycles. For Canada, this matters deeply. Arctic bases are remote. Supply chains are long. Weather windows are narrow. A fighter that needs constant maintenance or delicate treatment is not practical for a country with Canada's scale. Gripen was engineered to minimize these burdens. It can be maintained by small crews, requires fewer spare parts, and uses modular components accessible even in austere conditions. For Canada, this represents an opportunity to achieve a resilient, high-readiness air force capable of defending the North without overwhelming the defense budget. Sovereignty, Sweden's example, highlights the value of control. Canada wants but rarely gets. Perhaps the most telling lesson from the Baltic intercept is one the public rarely hears. Gripen gives Sweden complete sovereign control over its air defense. This includes software, mission data, electronic warfare libraries, and logistics chains, all fully under national authority. For Canada, sovereignty is not just a political buzzword. It is a strategic necessity. NORAD requires Canadian fighters to operate independently and make immediate decisions without reliance on foreign permissions or remote software control. Gripen's architecture gives that autonomy because Sweden designed it specifically to avoid external dependence. Every line of code, every electronic warfare mode, every data integration point belongs to Sweden. This stands out sharply in contrast to systems that depend on foreign logistics, pipelines, cloud-based maintenance networks, or centrally controlled mission files. Sweden's ability to immediately dispatch Gripen against Tu-22M3 without foreign clearance demonstrates a critical sovereignty advantage. Canada is one of the few nations in the world that deeply values defense sovereignty, and Sweden provides a model for how to achieve it with a lean, efficient, nationally controlled fighter fleet. Size does not equal power. Gripen's real-world success counters a common North American misconception. Many Canadians are used to comparing fighter jets based on size, weight, engine thrust, or radar dimensions. In this mindset, Gripen appears modest. Yet the Baltic incident proved a more important principle. Effectiveness is not defined by maximum specifications, but by the ability to perform in real conditions with consistency and speed. Gripen showed that even a lightweight fighter can secure national airspace against one of Russia's most sophisticated bomber threats. This is the kind of real-world performance Canada should value. Fast reaction, reliable cold-weather operation, efficient use of personnel, high readiness, predictable sustainment costs. These are the traits that matter for defending Canada's north. For Canada, the lesson is obvious. Gripen's strengths are the strengths Canada needs most. The Tu-22M3 intercept was a moment of clarity for anyone who understands Arctic defense. It highlighted how a smart, efficient, cold-weather-capable fighter can deliver national security without requiring massive budgets or enormous bases. Gripen fits Canada's geography. Gripen fits Canada's climate. Gripen fits Canada's dispersed communities. Gripen fits Canada's sovereignty philosophy. Gripen fits NORAD's quick reaction expectations. And most importantly, Gripen proved it in a real operation, not a simulation, not a brochure, but against a real strategic bomber carrying hypersonic weapons. For Canada, that kind of proof is invaluable. As Canada looks ahead to the next several decades of air defense planning, one truth becomes increasingly difficult to ignore. The country needs an aircraft that matches its geography, its climate, its sovereignty requirements, and its long-term sustainment realities. And when viewed through that lens, the Swedish Gripen is not just a capable fighter. It represents an entirely different model of air power, one that aligns naturally with Canada's strategic environment in a way no other modern fighter does. The intercept of the Russian Tu-22M3, armed with hypersonic Kh-32 missiles, was not merely a demonstration of Sweden's readiness. It was a demonstration of an air defense philosophy, one that emphasizes autonomy, resilience, speed, low infrastructure dependence, and the ability to maintain high readiness over long distances and harsh climates. These principles are exactly the foundation Canada needs for the coming decades, especially as Arctic competition, long-range missile threats, and strategic bomber patrols increase. Canada's air defense isn't about massive fleets. It's about sustainable presence. The central challenge of defending Canadian airspace is not the number of aircraft, nor is it the sophistication of their sensors. It is sustainability over a vast, sparsely populated northern territory. A fighter that can launch quickly, remain available in cold weather, and require minimal ground crew is far more valuable than a heavier, more complex aircraft that spends most of its time undergoing maintenance. This is where Gripen fundamentally changes the equation. The fighter is engineered to achieve extremely high availability rates. Its maintenance cycles are short, its components modular, and its systems designed for rapid troubleshooting in environments far harsher than Southern Ontario or British Columbia. In short, Gripen doesn't require perfect conditions to be mission-ready. It thrives in exactly the kind of conditions Canada deals with every winter. Imagine a future where Canada doesn't need to centralize its entire fighter fleet at a handful of major bases, but can instead disperse aircraft across the northern regions when required, move them quickly during crises, and operate them from short runways or improvised locations. This capability alone would redefine NORAD's northern posture, and Gripen was built to make such a posture realistic. Arctic air power is about flexibility, not weight or size. For decades, Canadian air defense discussions have been shaped by the assumption that bigger is better. Bigger radars, bigger engines, bigger sensors, bigger airframes. But Arctic reality is different. Canada doesn't need fighters optimized for high-density combat over Europe. It needs fighters optimized for long-range patrols, rapid scramble capability, harsh winter operations, and high reliability in remote communities. Gripen was born from this logic. It does not require a massive installation to function. Its engine can start reliably in sub-zero temperatures. It can be serviced by small teams using simple tools. It does not require a full squadron of technicians to deploy temporarily. These traits translate directly into operational advantages for Canada. The ability to protect far northern approaches with an aircraft that is always ready, not just when infrastructure allows. Sovereignty and independence. Gripen aligns with Canada's defense identity. One of the most overlooked aspects of Gripen is the sovereignty it grants its operators. Sweden designed the aircraft to ensure full national control over software, mission data, electronic warfare systems, and logistics. For Canada, a nation that must operate within NORAD but also maintain independent decision-making authority, this is a significant advantage. It means Canada could tailor electronic warfare libraries to its unique Arctic threats. It means Canada could modify mission data files without foreign approval. It means Canadian technicians could maintain the jet without relying on foreign-controlled networks. This degree of autonomy is rare in modern fighter programs, where foreign software locks, centralized maintenance clouds, and external data dependencies have become the norm. Gripen offers a different path, a sovereign fighter for a sovereign nation. A force multiplier, not a budget burden. Canada's defense budget is not unlimited. Every dollar must count. Gripen enables a very different kind of force structure, one where the cost of flying the fighter does not consume the bulk of operational funding. Instead, it frees resources for Arctic infrastructure, surveillance systems, pilot training, and NORAD modernization efforts. Cheap to operate does not mean cheap in performance. It means sustainable performance. Gripen's affordability could allow Canada to maintain a larger active fleet, higher sortie numbers, and greater northern presence, all without the financial strain that heavier, maintenance-intensive fighters impose. This alone could shift Canada's air defense posture from reactive to proactive. Gripen's real value, redefining what air superiority means for Canada. The Swedish Intercept proved something that should resonate in Ottawa. Air superiority is not always about having the biggest gun. It's about having the right tool, available at the right time, in the right place. Gripen excels at this because it embodies a concept of smart air power, rapid reaction, high readiness, dispersed basing, low operating cost, cold weather optimization, sovereign control, consistent performance in real-world conditions. For Canada, this is not just attractive, it is exactly what long-term national security demands. A new model for Canada's future Air Force. If Canada were to adopt Gripen, either as a primary fighter or as part of a mixed fleet, the country's air defense architecture would transform almost immediately. Instead of a few major bases, Canada could maintain distributed nodes of readiness. Instead of relying entirely on the southern infrastructure, fighters could maintain presence directly in the Arctic. Instead of focusing on maintenance cycles and budget strain, Canada could focus on training, presence, and sovereignty. Gripen would give Canada the ability to defend its north in a way no fighter has allowed before. Fast, flexible, resilient, and designed for cold weather operations matching Canada's identity. The Tu-22M3 intercept was a reminder that air threats are real, long-range missiles are evolving, and Arctic airspace is becoming strategically crucial. But it was also a reminder that nations do not need massive fleets or billion-dollar bases to respond effectively. They need aircraft that fit their environment. Sweden designed Gripen for Sweden, but by doing so, it accidentally designed an aircraft that fits Canada even better. And that is the core conclusion. Gripen isn't just a fighter Canada could fly. It's a fighter that could reshape Canada's entire approach to air defense. A fighter that fits the land, the climate, the mission, and the future. Thanks so much for watching and for being part of this community. If you enjoyed this analysis and want to see more in-depth breakdowns about air power, Arctic security, and how aircraft like the Gripen could change the future of Canadian and North American defense, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss a new video. Your support helps us grow and allows us to bring you even more high-quality content, backed by research and real-world insight. I'd also love to hear your thoughts. Your perspective makes this conversation even better. Here are 3 questions to get the discussion started. Do you think Canada should consider a fighter like the Gripen for Arctic defense? What part of the Swedish intercept impressed you the most? Speed, discipline, or capability? How important is sovereign control for Canada when choosing future military systems? Share your ideas in the comments. I read every single one. Thank you again for watching. Take care and have an amazing day. We'll see you in the next video.